You know what? The sound of water rustling. You've heard the hum of healing melodies. Water that flows in Polly is also part of nature's water. And to feel the harmony between my body and my mother, you will be healed step by step. Living in harmony with nature, it requires the efforts of a whole team. So, I hope we can change our habits together. Durable every day, small to large, and make the earth more sustainable. Now let's get started. Let's start this podcast. Fools who talk about morality live like butterflies. Is this an excuse or not? Listen to this podcast to find the answer for me. Let's first clarify what the concept of fallacy is. It's also known as logical fallacy. Is a faulty argument in explaining a behavior, intentionally or unintentionally. In there, critics use logical errors in their arguments, or distract the debate to end it, or achieving the goal of argument. The fallacy makes the debate never end, or end very quickly in obscurity without solving the problem. Most of the excuses, it's often surrounded by an outer shell of reason and persuasion. We can unwittingly skim through the fallacies everywhere in life, daily in the press, television, advertising, the statements of idols and celebrities. Maybe even you and me. They're also making excuses every day. In Jack Jenko's manipulation book, there's a classic example. Father smoking ban. The son is a teenager who smokes. He said that smoking is bad for your health, and the son should quit smoking. Contradictions appear in action and the father's words. The answer that my son answered, surely you can guess. And Dad, why do you smoke? Take a walk around social media, skimming the comments to the articles. You will also see the following comments. All kinds. Do well, then talk. What can I do for the country with such a big mouth? Take a look at yourself. There is no better place than me to judge me. You're not full of mistakes too? What right do you have to advise me? See the moral guy again. Those guys talk about life ethics like shit. Too familiar, right? The above-mentioned counter-argument sounds reasonable, but it's essentially a kind of fallacy. It's called look who's talking, or to quote Quay fallacy. Sophistry. You too. This fallacy dates back to ancient Greece. Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher, one of the founders of philosophy the West, blamed Callicles. You broke your original promise. What you say contradicts your own thinking. You don't deserve to be my partner. On the way to find the truth. No words of agreement. Callicles blamed Socrates. You don't always tell the truth. Then I'm no different. In modern times, famous example for the fallacy you too. It was during the Cold War. The Soviets used this tactic to deal with the criticism about human rights violations. The Soviet government often asked questions. So what is the US government? To refute the criticisms for their actions. In the above cases, the reviewer accuses someone when they don't do what's right. They talk and take advantage of behavioral inconsistencies to discredit the enemy and reject their arguments. One tip of those who make this fallacy is, I give advice, but don't live up to that advice. So A's words are worthless. This is a kind of informal fallacy. Informal fallacy. A variation of personal attack. This kind of argument to refute the interlocutor's argument by assuming that their behavior is not compatible with the conclusion. Have done anything yet to advise others? Words like that, for the purpose of find out the bad things about the enemy. Things they're not equal to this person, not as good as the author, to make them falter and dare not continue the debate. However, according to philosophy, then an argument is a rational conversation, understanding the truth towards the truth's truth. It's not a war, where every word is like a weapon to help us defeat the enemy. So the truth of the statement, it doesn't depend on the stories, the individual of the speaker, it's the logic of speech. It's about what people say. It's not entirely about moral correctness. That people say. An argument should not be judged to be true or false, if it's just based on who said it. Do it or not. The sharpness of an argument. It must be judged by the nature of the statement. Just like work, I don't have to be a singer-actor, have to go to vocal classes, professional acting, to be evaluated this artist sings or this actor plays badly. We're simply commenters. And give your own feedback. Sophistry, you too. It's essentially a personal attack. It's because they're weak that they hit us in the spirit. They want to make me feel bad. Or blame yourself. It's not just about the quality of the debate reduced, it's also inhibiting discomfort for the person under attack. In the long run, it will easily lead to a break in the feelings of both sides. Sophistry, you too. It has been around for a long time and exists to this day. A politician, an ordinary person like us, even to the kids, also accidentally or deliberately made this fallacy. It's a reflection of the way society thinks. That if someone else does something wrong, I can do that too, without being held accountable or criticized. This shows that the lack of responsibility and self-respect of some, when they don't understand that everyone is responsible for their actions, of my own, and we can't deny responsibility by comparing it to the actions of others. So what do we need to do to deal with this fallacy? The first is, point out the irrelevance of the attack. And it's a matter of debate. Let's talk directly to the people who are using the fallacy. That, I think you're attacking me personally. That this has nothing to do with the problem. We're arguing. You can also continue to argue and ask the opponent to explain the fallacious behavior, their personal attacks. But before we continue our civilized debate, let the enemy see that. You know they're attacking you personally, but you don't care. Second, we can directly address the fallacy. Personal attacks, in some cases, fallacy, it may affect the outcome of the discussion. So let's get straight. Denies the opponent's claims and give a rational explanation. The third is, you can ignore that personal attack. Instead of feeling offended or trying to justify, you can ignore that attack and continue to argue. In this way, you're showing me you're not on the same level as me. The fourth way is, we're able to receive and filter information, suggestions to fix yourself. Like in the story, the father advised his son not to smoke. That's right, the son replied that he smoked too. Why do you even forbid me is an excuse. Dad smokes, and his advice to his son about the harmful effects of smoking. It's two independent aspects. However, to be able to firmly support the view, or my advice, a father should also set an example for his children. That is, when you get the excuses. You too? You and I need to ask ourselves. Because I can answer that later. I understand that you feel a contradiction in words and my father's actions, but I'm also changing. This is the youth mistake, and now I'm paying for it. Of course, I don't want you to make a mistake and pay such a high price. Look at general, each way solved will be suitable in different circumstances. Whatever you choose, the most important thing is no personal attacks. It affects your mood and psyche. Just don't attack them. But let's keep the debate as objective as possible. Listening to others is not self-serving. It's about boldly acknowledging your weaknesses if you have them. Dare to change if you are wrong. Not swayed by the will of his opinion. And make arguments against the fallacy. The important thing you need to understand is, standing in front of a personal attack fallacy, it means you're in a psychological battle between self-respect and self-examination, between perfecting yourself and avoid unnecessary conflict. Okay, here's the argument above. You have found yourself the answer to the first question? Fools who talk about morality, lives like butterflies. Is it an excuse or not? First of all, please correct the sentence is to borrow the viral lyrics of Fuwang Anhe. To increase curiosity for the listener only. But butterflies are not guilty of anything in the matter we're discussing. And I'll give you a double answer. That statement is both an excuse and not an excuse. Depending on the different situations. If in a controversial situation, when a person makes a moral point, and the others jumped in, use this sentence to make fun of him, without talking about correctness or falsity of the point of view being debated. Merely is to use this sentence to divert the opponent's attention out of the debate, bring down the enemy. You can think of it as a kind of tu quoque. Sophistry, you too. It's a bad view of what it is. This sentence, it's becoming a buzzword for many people, into the movement of the netizen, and overused. However, there are also cases where you can use words. You speak well, but live not as you say, without making any fallacies. When criticizing those who say morality is hypocrisy, When the speaker has finished his moral exhortation, then right after that, they act contrary to what they say, or not following the advice. They just gave it to someone else. For example, that's why I advise people to love themselves. You have to open your heart. Not be angry. Take out anger on the weak. But she is still obsessed with her weight. I still hate your own image in the mirror. Sniffed drama. And frequently petty. Or holding my face crying alone. After every episode of her podcast, you often think that. I accept the points that your argument makes, but you're acting against it. Your argument will be more persuasive if you can do that too. Right now, you don't reject the argument about being active. Why is that? They just take action. It's considered her hypocrisy. So there's no fallacy here. And when I hear these words because of why, all she does is ask herself. And change yourself. I've been thinking a lot about this podcast. I've actually thought about it. And had a practice of making up for itself. Because it is. I haven't done what I said. Then I said down. Avoid and change the title for the postcard. And it's called, Why Do We Advise People but Not to Advise Ourselves? About Solomon's paradox. That exercise is also quite gentle. The argument doesn't get straight to the point, but it's also a milestone for me. I dared to question myself. I'll see why. Felt as a mirror to illuminate our own behaviors. To remind myself. There will be many more mistakes. But thank you very much for your kind comments. After all, you are the one who decides. The philosophy of advice that self-help books. The thought of grapes, Buddhism that people still fake every day. Not quite right and not quite wrong. It's only fitting and fitting depending on the time. I listened and looked at myself. If something is good, we can share our views, to learn together, not impose and admonish others on the face. May I borrow your words? By poet Yuan Hung. Let's close the podcast this time. I often blame my life for being twisted. We are not round in our own minds. That sounds moral, doesn't it? But as I said, see or see fit, then we can share it with each other, to discuss together. So goodbye, guys. See you in the next postcards. That's the video.